What up, Pittsburgh Steelers fans? It is your Mad Monday show from the Mad Men Down Under. It is Marky D and Matty P here. Marky D, how are you, my good friend?
Bloody tired, mate. Bloody tired. I just played 2 days of strenuous pickleball, and I said to you in a private conversation that's now public, but because I'm saying it now, but I don't know how players do it. NFL players or rugby league players. I'm exhausted. I ran around for 2 days straight, getting every ball I could, but I wasn't getting tackled, right? And I'm sore everywhere, and I'm taking a day off pretty much everything, and I'm like, I don't know how the players do it. Honestly, they get tackled in NFL, they run down the kicks, teamers, receivers run the routes, 60 times a match or 40 whatever. And rugby league players do an 80-minute game. They must be really sore. I'm just saying, I don't know. It makes you think back to other physical contact sports. But yeah, had a pretty good weekend. Got bronze and 2 silvers in my divisions. Although it's not that charming as it sounds, because in my divisions there are only about 4 or 5 teams, so you almost guaranteed a medal. But still got there. Yeah, how's your weekend, mate?
Yeah, not too bad. Saw the John Wick 4 the second time.
There's a 4, is there?
Yeah, I saw the fourth one a second time. My fiance hadn't seen him. She went along with me to 4, and then she got into it. So we watched all. So we went to 4 last weekend, and then we watched the 3 during the week. We ended up watching actually Friday, Saturday, and then we went on. Just dropped my pen. But we went on Sunday and we watched it. And I also watched ice hockey. I went to the ice hockey, the Sydney Ice Dogs.
How's that going?
So that's good. It was the first game of the season. They lost to the Sydney Bears. They're crosstown rivals. I mean, they both play at the same stadium. It's good to see the couple of Canadian imports that they've got as well in that ice hockey league. So I decided, I've kind of casually watched them, and I decided I'm going to be into it this season. So they had another game last night. I've watched it again. Last night, I'm going to a few games. There's a team up near your way. Maybe you should get on them. We can have a bit of a rivalry.
Who are they? Cool. We got a rink
You're
near
the Central
Erina.
Coast Rhinos.
Rhinos, that's right. Yeah, they're in rink near Erina. I went and saw a game when I was in Canada.
And they nicked one of my team's players. I mean, I've only been really on the bandwagon for 6 months, but anyway, they nicked their young guy who's the Australian captain. They're paying him more.
Ask me this: whereabouts did you sit in the rink? Were you up close?
Yeah, pretty much. We're 3 or 4, just because I've got the height, but my fiance is 5'3", so we sat 3 or 4 hours back. So we were pretty close though. Yeah.
Yeah, because I
kind of we're on the side. We're on the side. It doesn't have glass, man. It's a net. So
really?
And we sat right behind the penalty. It was really good. And so the Sydney Bears have been around for 30, 40 years. The Ice Dogs have been around for 20. It's maybe about Steelers, but anyway, the Ice Dogs have been around for about 20, 22 years, I think it is, this season. And so there's a lot more Bears fans, and they've got the cooler uniforms, and they've got the money. You know what I mean? It's got more money, more investment. So that was a packed stadium because they both play at home there. But it was really good to be on the underdogs, and they are the Ice Dogs sort of side of things. Although they have a bulldog as the uniform, Americans might think of a pit bull. I'm kind of thinking Ice Dog, you should have more like a wolf kind of thing.
Yeah,
anyway, whatever.
Alaskan wolf.
But
I like it when I was over there in Canada. I actually preferred local hockey better than the NHL.
Yeah, it was good, man.
Than NHL. To me, they played really physical. They allowed the fighting a bit more, and you could see the play. I saw Calgary about 1,000 yards away. I had no idea who was playing. When I saw the local game when I was in Canmore or somewhere like that in Alberta, I saw up close and personal. It's fantastic.
Oh, mate, it's terrific. It's absolutely terrific. Yeah, my fiance loves hockey as well. So it was a really, really good. It's a good time. And as someone who played rugby when they were growing up, and I can't ice skate for crap. I'm hopeless. I look like the first timer out there. I look at this sport and I'm like, man, I feel like I was denied a sport I would have been really good at.
You would probably would have been a good shooter or something like that, like a center forward, maybe a right wing or something
I don't know. Even the defense, there was a couple of guys out there and I was like, oh yeah, I could do this. Plus, there's so much padding. I'd love to play with that much padding, man. You have stuff you could do to someone with that much padding on.
I think our era when we were growing up as kids was the Mighty Ducks. I think everyone was rollerblading that time, weren't we? Everyone was knuckle puck time and the Bash Bros, and we've got our own Bash Bros with Gentry and with Frymouth too. But I remember those days, all you wanted to do was like play ice hockey. And we didn't have any rings around here.
Mate, I haven't watched the Mighty Ducks, the reboot, the new reboot, the Mighty Ducks Game Changers. I watched that, man. I love it.
Yeah, but that was around, I think our time was like, we got into that stuff. Yeah. We didn't have a rink near us. The closest rink I had near me was Newcastle. And I was like, Aaron. Right. But then they made Aaron back in the day. But yeah.
But Newcastle have a team as well. They play at Newcastle as well, I think. The Central Coast. Oh, there's a Newcastle team. I think there's a Newcastle team as well. Yeah, there is. There's a Newcastle team. So
the Newcastle.
I'd have to look it up on my phone. But anyway, maybe we have to start an AIHL podcast. I don't know. They are ones that exist.
That would go off, maybe. No, it's good. It's good to see. You know what's good to see local sport actually. Any local sport.
That's what I mean. It got me thinking too. Like the local NFL here is very university based. There's kind of two teams in New South Wales, and it's a bit of a one team wins you and all the rest of it. But it was just good to watch local sport, and it was good. Anyway, to the Steelers side of things, obviously, we had our touchdown under premiere show on the weekend, so I was live in the chat. I think you were live in the chat for a bit. I don't know. Some people might say it was a busy weekend, end of the week with, Tanner Muse and Braden Mann coming across and the rumors about Buddha Baker. And I don't think he fits with the Steelers really with what they've done so far. But I know you had said to me off air, you wanted to talk a little bit about the team and how things are shaping up and what's Omar Khan trying to achieve and all the rest of it. I think that's a great place to start. So let's go.
Let's rewind a little bit, not too far, but just rewind a little bit to what's been happening over the last few weeks or so. And to me, you can really see the Omar Khan effect and the Andy Waddle effect too. And the organization is obviously found some weak areas where they're trying to improve, and we won't know until probably training camp, preseason. Around that's when you start seeing the players, play football, or you start reading articles about the guys who are on the field and can give us the updates about what is happening. But you can really see a massive transition now from the Big Ben era. And we talked about this from the very start of our podcast on BTSC and now Steel Curtain Network. Where's the culture? And I feel like they're starting to develop that, because they've pretty much cut half the middle linebacker room. And Omar Khan is mixing pieces around. Of course, they're going around through all the pro day vids, which they normally do anyway. But even bringing in a punter, I know it's a no-name guy, but it's someone to bring some competition. You know what I'm saying? Go and get the other guy, Tanner Muse.
Well, I mean, he played for the Jets for 3 years straight. He's not no one.
Yeah, well, I don't know too much about him, right? But it's good competition. The other bloke, Tanner Muse, coming in too, pretty much says they won't be signing back Marcus Allen. And that made me think, you still haven't signed back Marcus Allen. He is injured. You haven't signed back Derek Watt. It makes me think the Steelers, if they don't sign him back, they've got a plan. They found there's some weaker areas there, and they can improve on those parts by putting in Connor Haywood or by bringing in another teamer who can fill that role and do a better job. I think they're upgrading at the positions, maybe not by a lot, but by a little bit. And I think that's what's going to help us go in the draft. I really like what they're doing, but you can't wait you got to wait till the results in September. If they go 4-0 and they're playing good football and the team's clicking, then it all makes a lot of sense. But it's been a huge transition from not big, spicy, crazy players, but players that are just making sense of this team. They're building the O-line, they're building the D-line, they're bringing in competition. That's what I like about it. And I don't know, is this the big difference from Omar Khan taking full control to Kevin Colbert? Is that what we're seeing? Is it like my team right now and we're getting all his pieces plus Andy Waddle as well?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think this team was due for a refresh. I think the team, if you really go back kind of even since about 2018, 2019, this team's been in a rebuild phase, right? And I think with Steel fans, we like to think they're always in it. And they are, and they've done a good job of trying to be in it with the playoffs. But I mean, I know 2019 we still had Ben, and a lot of it was how do we get Ben, into another Super Bowl? But really, this team needed a refresh, and I feel like now we're gearing up. We've got the quarterback, got a few key pieces on the offense this year. We obviously in the draft they're going to get at least a couple of O-linemen, and then at least one. Put it that way, it'll be early on too. then they start refreshing the defense to get cheaper there so they can re-sign this offense. And then things are humming. I think, as I've said, a lot of people are focused on 2023. And you don't want to wish your life away or anything like it. But to me, 2024 and 2025 are those seasons where I expect AFC Championship and Super Bowl appearance. But 2023 is going to be really important. They need to go to the playoffs and they need to win a playoff game. It's big, or at least get into double digits. I think that's really important. So it's how does that team gear up to that? And in a 17-game season, I think this team has proven in the trenches. Yeah, they had an offensive line that stood there through 5 games and didn't destroy Kenny Pickett. Like, at least, you know what? With the Bengals with Joey Burrow stuffed up his knee that season. He played 6 games in his rookie year, and it was all about how he came back from that. At least we don't have to worry about that as Steel fans. Like, at least Kenny Pickett gets a chance to have a full offseason. And so I think about the trenches, and on the offensive line, you get a bit more depth there. You get better there. They've already started doing that through free agency. And then you look on the other side of the ball and you go, well, it can't just be TJ, Cam, a bit of Highsmith doing all the work. The secondary has to put pressure so that teams are forced to run the ball, are forced into short passing yardage, not to just go for deep things. And I mean, how good would it be, Mark, if let's say the defense was exactly as it was last year and the year before, except the one thing they improved was on 3rd and long. They didn't allow the team to convert that, right? Imagine how much. No, but think about, like, I'd have to go back and do some analysis. I might write it down so I go and do that. But I'd love to know if we took away 50% of the 3rd and longs in game that we allow in games. What a difference! Like, whether that leads us to a win, whether that leads us to winning by 5 extra points per game, whatever that benefit is. I think that's huge. And so I'm kind of interested in how the Steelers do those sorts of things. How you get 3 or 4 players getting more than 6 or more than 8 sacks. That's a big. I mean, you saw that from the Eagles this year. They had 4 guys in double-digit sacks, and look how far that took them. And you're gonna have to do that in the AFC when you're facing, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Josh Allen, probably Aaron Rodgers, and Joey Burrow. You are gonna need to be able to get 50 sacks on the season, and you're gonna have to be able to get sacks in the playoffs. And teams are gonna go hard at continuing to hold TJ Watt. They might start doing it to Highsmith. We need other guys that can rush the passer, and that is still why I think the Liao signing or pickup in the draft last year is massive, because he's that pass rusher, but he can play on the interior. So yeah, I think going back to what you're saying now, I like what they're doing. Building from the trenches out.
Do you think the Steelers start doing what the Eagles are doing the last few years, where they rotate a lot of their defensive line? That's 100%. Why they keep bringing in all these guys 100%. In, like the Fahoko, and what the other dude we got. I don't remember who that dude was. Who was the other bloke we got?
Was.
Yeah, do you know what I'm saying? They started doing that, right? I think the Eagles, like, from the last few years, what I saw them doing was 3 guys come in, 3 guys go out, or they're always fresh.
It's kind of funny. Like, you hear this rumor about Luke Van Ness to the Steelers, and I've been on the record. I don't like it because, I don't think he's going to do a lot in the Steelers' current scheme in year 1, because I think he needs to put on another minimum 15, probably more like 35 pounds, and that's a lot of weight to put on, and to put on NFL weight too. But some people keep mocking him there. So, there's got to be some bit of smoke around that. But I know our old colleagues at Steel Curtain Network talked about Steelers switching to a 4-3. Now, I bring that up because they told me this on Twitter, that they had talked about that. And I want to go back and listen to that conversation, because it was good friends of ours in Shannon White and Jeffrey Benedict, who you and I both got existing relationships with, both gentlemen, and they're excellent. In fact, we'll probably look to get them on some of our shows soon. And we can't wait to have them. So I think there's that element. But when I saw the Luke Van Ness thing, I'm like, well, they better go to a 4-3. Now, remember a year ago when you and I did a show, I talked about the Steelers potentially with what, what's his face? The defensive assistant, mental blank, from the Dolphins, Brian Flores with what he's done and a lot of his 4-3 background at times. I wonder whether, and you look at the Eagles as well, they play all sorts of different fronts. I wonder whether the Steelers are about to get a whole lot versatile in the different fronts that they play, right? Because it could be very interesting. And when you look at what Highsmith can do in stopping the run, and you look at what TJ can do and interceptions and those sorts of things, I could see a team that's a lot more versatile towards a 4-3. I wouldn't necessarily go the whole hog and say they're becoming a 4-3 team. I don't think we're there. And we don't have the linebacker on the roster. The linebackers they signed are 3-4 linebackers. So it's not like they would go full that way. But I think they're lining up to have different packages that they can offer in schemes and more versatile than what they've got right now or they've done to date.
Can we just explore that for a little minute? Because we do the 3-4, right? Where it's 3-4, 2 middle linebackers, 2 on the outside. So if you play the 4, then you got the 4 big fellas up front. Then what do you play? Do you play Highsmith on one side, TJ on the other, and then who's going to be the middle linebacker? Who would that be?
Well, this is the
Or do you play TJ in the 4, like on the edge? Like, do you play him as one of the D linemen?
Yeah, you can, but you actually probably TJ's athletic enough that look. TJ's athletic enough. If you had a third rusher, like if you'd had, let's say, like a Bud Dupree, who also probably could play in the up front on that, you could probably play TJ. I reckon you can. TJ's athletic enough that you could play him in the middle, but it would be a waste, right? Yeah. But I'll tell you who could play in the middle. Keanu Neal could play in the middle there. Right. Now, I like a slightly bigger guy. I don't think Jack Campbell is a 4-3 linebacker. So if they sign a Jack Campbell, there's no going to a 4-3. Like he's a 3-4 inside linebacker. But if you sign like a Dayan Henley, if you sign a Henry To'oTo'o, I mean by sign, I mean pick up in the draft, you get those sorts of guys. Yeah, you've got a 4-3 linebacker in there. Now, the interesting thing about Jack Campbell, though, is he's been training with Luke Kuechly, who made his money out of being a 4-3 inside, like middle linebacker. So it is interesting. Look, Holcomb's a lot faster and better. I wouldn't say he's like a tremendously great coverage linebacker, but he's a lot more of the versatile linebacker than what a lot of people give him credit for. But yeah, TJ, you could line him up either as the linebacker rushing, or you could line him up as that edge guy. But I still reckon he's probably 10 to 12 pounds less than that. And the idea would be anyway with the 4 front that you're taking on that offensive line and allowing TJ to still come around. Like the idea would be that you're creating gaps for a guy like TJ to rush through and holes for a guy like that to rush through, including Holcomb. I wouldn't say I don't see a full switch to a 4-3 happening right now.
Right.
I'm not saying it wouldn't happen in the future. But I do think, as I said in my earlier part, that I think the versatility and the diversity in packages the Steelers offer in defense this year, I think is going to be a lot bigger. Definitely.
So when they're using the 4-3, right, you'll have the 4 defenders up front. Is it more or less trying to stop the run than it is the pass?
I think look, you have to go to guys that watch even a lot more tape than I do. A lot of people, to me, a 3-4 is better at stopping the run. To me, what I've seen when teams execute it well, because you've got to execute it well. But a team, as long as they execute any scheme, if they execute it right, should be able to stop, the run or the pass. But I do think 3-4 is more conducive to stopping the run because the holes that you create, you've got 2 inside linebackers coming in there. I like that better, and you usually probably have a bigger. It's generalization, but usually on a 3-4, you're gonna have bigger interior guys, and probably you're gonna invest a little bit more there, like because you put less guys in that position. Really, the problem that the Steelers have as well is I don't think we've got the depth at defensive end, nor do we have the depth at outside linebacker that would make a 4-3 work particularly well right now. Now, who's to say Armand Watts has a great preseason and Fehoko, and you got Leal and Montravis Adams and all those guys, but none of those guys are, to me, a bona fide day one starter week in, week out, right? And to me, if that's the case, who are you pairing with Cam Hayward? All right, if you do that, then you've got Leal on one side, Ogunjobi on the other. Well, I just think this team's still set up to be a 3-4, but I don't know. Jeffrey Bennett, when he tweeted at me, sort of insinuated they're on their way to a 4-3. Next year, we could be sitting there and go, yes, they're definitely building for a 4-3. I think it's too early right now to sit there and say this is a team that will play a 4-3 defense in 2023. The other problem that I had last year when I looked around the league was a lot of teams will have what they played last year, but different sites and different analysis blogs and things like Pro Football Reference and all that will show different things. What I will say, though, that was interesting last year is when I looked at it, a lot of teams were switching back to a 3-4. And I think a lot of teams have played 4-3 thinking that would allow them to have faster, bigger guys that could rush the pass instead of having to play sub-package. And one of the things we know with the Steelers is while they're a 3-4, they play 60% of their snaps in a sub-package, right?
So I was going to say anyway, yeah.
So I don't know why you'd overinvest in switching to that, because a 3-4 will help you play a lot of the nickel packages, the big nickel packages.
Yeah.
A lot of teams are playing, you need to play dime anyway to stop a Patrick Mahomes. And ultimately, because I think the Eagles, I don't know what they played last year, but often most years over the last 20 years that I've been, really into it, that they played a 4-3 a lot of the time. Even if when they've been listed at 3-4, if you look at their snaps, they still end up playing 4-3. They got the alignment to play a 4-3. But even then, regardless of what they played, ultimately, in the Super Bowl, it didn't matter who they had up front, and they weren't stopping Isaiah Pacheco running anyway, but they needed to be able to stop the pass. And so I like this offseason, the fact that we're trying to fix the secondary. Now, a lot of people are like, that's why they got to get a cornerback at 17. I'm the other way. I think you still got to build the trenches out. And I think we've talked about, I can't even tell you right now whether it would work fully to switch to a 4-3. And I don't want to switch to a 4-3. I like 3-4 because I don't think they've got enough depth there in the trenches. So, I think this fixing the secondary the way they have, getting depth in the trenches is helpful. And the thing that strikes me, last time on our TDU boys show that we did over the weekend, we showed the depth chart. I feel like the Steelers have done what they've been, even though Khan and Weidel have brought in a lot of players, made some changes, done some things, made some cuts, made some moves. They're still applying by the principle of filling the most urgent needs before the draft so they can go out and get BPA in the draft. And I think that's a recipe for success. Well, it's proven to be.
I like what you said about, they pretty much, obviously they are a 3-4 defense, but they go out in the different packages anyway. And that's why it's so fun to watch too, when you see the guys coming off the nickel side, or they go into that dime look where they have, I don't know, back, I thought of dime, I instantly thought of Marcus Allen. I don't know why Marcus Allen was back there in some scenarios, right? But I also like seeing when TJ Watt, stands around, and sometimes you see him as middle linebacker, you're like, what the hell are you doing middle linebacker? But then he's doing a straight up rush. So yeah, it comes down to like the formation is like obviously the normal one we know in our depth chart, and we see all that kind of stuff, but these guys have much more, they're a coach rather than me, so they know what's going on. So I'm intrigued to see what they do. I don't think they will transition into a 4-3, but I do. That's why I like what Omar Khan's doing, and it's a different perspective now on this team since I think 2 years ago, because they're bringing all these new guys. They've signed I think over 11 free agents. I think and about
I was just looking at their transaction pages, but I haven't updated them for 4 or 5 days, so it's a bit old. But I was trying to count up the transactions. There's certainly been a lot of transactions.
I think it's about 11 or so than that other signings, but bringing in Fehoko and Watts and all these guys, I think it's going to be a very intriguing summer in America. And like I said, with the Brandon Mann, he's probably not going to win the spot, but at least be competitive to push the other fella, the other punter in Presley Harvin. So yeah, what are we now, like 11 days away or 12 away from the draft? Is that right? I think we're pretty close.
It's crazy. Well, I've found an article from Steelers Depot from Alex Kozora, and I'll give him credit here. He reckons he counted up all the snaps. I don't know where he got these, but he basically, the Steelers played 37.8% in the nickel, 24.9% in the 3-4, 17.9% in the dime, 3-3-5, which is still technically a nickel formation, 11.9%, 4-4, 4.4%. I could see them playing that a bit more. 3-5, 2.3%, and then the rest is less than a percent. Played one snap in 4-3. So I don't see a 4-3 change, right? And usually that change would happen with a change in a defensive coordinator, and they haven't done that. And I think if you go back to what the Steelers DC has previously done, I think he's only operated in 3-4 defenses. Terrell Austin. I'd have to check that though. I'd have to check that.
Yeah, well, I trust him. I like the other point you came up. You brought up too with the third and longs. I don't know what this. If that's going to be a very hard stat to find, but I feel like.
But if Terrell Austin, see, for me though, Terrell Austin, we had Keith Butler, who was an outside linebacker coach that became the defensive coordinator. If you can't fix third and longs and get better at that when your DC is a secondary coach by trade, you've got a problem there, right? There's a real right. So, I wasn't a fan of him Remember last year, everyone was on the Matt Canada thing, and I brought up I didn't think. I wasn't a fan of Terrell. I didn't think. Well, not that I wasn't a fan. I felt like he wasn't doing the best job. The Steelers did finish with the league leading in interceptions, and that's big deal in a passing league. That is a big deal, and it's probably, as much as I hate it, and we just talked a lot about rushing the passer, it's probably more important than getting the most sacks in the league. You have to be able to. If you can't rush the quarterback too, you're going to struggle to throw to get interceptions because there's no pressure on the quarterback, right? But I know defensive tips at the line of scrimmage, that sort of stuff, but if the Steelers can improve again in their sacks, and obviously the big thing will be having TJ back, and they can be top 3 in the NFL for the interceptions and these splash plays, and I think bringing Patrick Peterson in helps you do that with his 5 interceptions last year. You've got Minka there, you've got Kazi. I think they'll draft someone at safety somewhere between round 2 and 4, and then you've got Levi Wallace. If they get someone like an Emmanuel Forbes, who I love, who we'll get out a clip on him for War Room. He's very light guy, so he's off a lot of people's radar. He's from Mississippi State. He's 6 foot and about 177 pounds or something. Like he's really thin. But DJ reckons he's the most talented and shows the best tape corner in the draft. It's just he doesn't have these. He's not 6'2". He's not 200 pounds. He doesn't run, a 4.3. So no, people aren't in on him. But when you look at the tape, he performs. So I think a guy like that you get in a second or a third round, or probably third round, and you build him into this cornerback group, and you get guys that can play there, and I do think the Steelers can get another 17 to 20 interceptions, and if they can get to 50 sacks, this team will win. This team, as I said to you before, and it's going to be my benchmark as we go through and until we start the season, is with each week that goes and the moves that are made, how do we feel the team has progressed in wins? They had the 9 wins last year. Right, I think 11's enough. If they get to 12, 11. Great, right? So my thing is, and I'll ask you, Mark, after some changes over the last week, and I've done a lot of talking in this podcast.
It's all right, mate.
But how do you feel? Do you think they've earned one? Do you think they've done enough between, let's say, Feb 1 to now? Have they enough to get 1 win, 2 wins, 3 wins on top of the 9 that they had last year? Or have they just managed to get back to being able to get 9? Have they only shored up the sandbags? Are they sandbagging?
Yeah, when you put it that way, if we start off at 9 and then you want to add or minus, I'd probably even say to a certain extent maybe 3 wins.
Possibly, right. So you're feeling like 12 based on what they've done.
Yeah, but that's the way you put the question. That's why I would probably do that. But in reality, I might say they might get 11 wins next year. But I think if you build on what they've been building upon and changing of the guard of like getting rid of the players. Like I said in my podcast of 2 weeks ago, once Patrick Peterson makes an interception, we'll forget about Cameron Sutton. We would be like, who, right?
Or he forces a fumble because he can hit, like he can actually really hit people, right?
Once Neal rocks a Bengal and he fumbles, we'll forget about Terrell Edmonds, right? It will just happen. Or Kazi makes a play, we'll forget. Not saying they weren't great players or whatever. I'm just saying they've done enough moves where they've either improved or they've got the same guy back, and we're going to see what happens there. So there could be a possibility where Peterson into his last 2 or 3 years, whatever he does do, if he does not plays up to 2 years, this might be the right time for him to end strong. It could be the case. He's still fit. He's still pretty fit. Just because he's 32 or 33 doesn't mean his season's over, right? Or his thing's over.
If there's wide receivers that can play at 35 and 36, there's corners that can play. Fine.
Yeah. we're around 30. I still feel pretty fit, except after two days of play. But
Yeah.
you know,
and we don't have access to the medical that they've got.
James Harrison what did he spend like $100,000 a year on health?
I think Russ spends $2 million a year.
Yeah, like it makes sense. So,
mate, even me as a normal human being, if I made $1 million a year, I'd probably spend like I spend several $1,000s a year on physio, just my daily life, right?
Yeah.
Like I 100% like diet. Like, yeah, I'd if I made $1 million a year, I'd be able to spend $50,000 on my health. If that gave me an extra 5 or 10 years on this planet, or allowed me to do things into my 70s or even 80s.
Same with the NFL.
I spend that money. I spend the money tomorrow. Yep. Done.
Yep. So yeah, when you put the question that way, if the baseline is 9 wins from last year, and all the players that we got and the players we got rid of, the Devin Bush who thinks he's going to win the Seattle division, and think they're better over there, I think they've gotten better. So yeah, maybe 2 or 3 wins from that standpoint. It's funny too how you said with Matt Canada how he got all the rap, and quietly in the background, Austin wasn't getting anything because Matt Canada was right in the firing line, and Austin's like, yeah, he's doing a real bad job.
Yeah, literally.
At the same time, though, Austin's defense, they weren't doing the best job either. And it was the weirdest thing this year or last year in 2022, 20 interceptions, and it didn't feel like that. No. It didn't feel like that at all. Like, how do you lead the whole league, and it still felt every single game was going down the wire, and the only game they won by double-digit points, I think, was against the Browns. They won by 14 points. That was one of the, I think, the only ones they won by, I think, 2 touchdowns. All the others might have been 10 points, 9 or 8 or something like that. So it didn't feel like a 20 interception a year, but maybe that's why they made some of those cuts and they brought in key guys to come in to compete. And it's always good to bring in a new guy because he's going to come to a new place and be like, you know what, I want to try and be the best that I can and get the person's job. And now we see that with this new defense. So, but you had the key players, of course, Cam, TJ, and Minka, Alex Highsmith, those key guys there, and the other guys just going to come in and say hello. So. That's a very interesting question. If we have standpoint 9, a lot of hype, you probably have to go to the playoffs. You probably have to at least try.
Yeah, I know. I got to try. But I mean, like right now, as I said, how are you feeling? Are you thinking 3 wins? You think the team will improve 3 wins?
Yeah, 3. I just want to see him in the playoffs again. I just want to see him in the playoffs.
But remember, if they draft really, really well,
it's like 12 and 5. Is it 5 losses?
Yeah, I don't know if they've improved that much.
It's an easier division, I guess. I think we're going to beat the Ravens twice. I think we're going to beat the Browns twice. I think we'll split with Bengals, and I can't remember off the top of their head who else we are versing. I think we're versing the Seahawks. We beat them because of Devin Bush, and I don't know the other teams we're versing, but I think it's an easier schedule. From memory, maybe we should do a show soon about that.
Yeah, way. Actually, it wouldn't be a bad one. Maybe we do it on TDU before the draft.
Way.
We don't know weeks of certain teams. We won't know that till after the draft. But it's a good it's a good measuring stick.
But when does the schedule come out? The schedule comes out after the draft, right?
Yeah, May 4th or something.
Let's do one before, and then we'll do one after.
Yeah,
when we have the actual stuff.
And we always do one in the before the preseason, then we do one between the preseason and the season starts.
Okay. So what are you saying? Because maybe I should say 11, but what are you saying? Where they going to end up?
I feel like they've got one more win in them so far. I think I got to temper it with what I think. Like, I think they're overall in the offseason, and we've got to close down the show, but I think overall in the offseason, if they should try and improve 2 to 3 wins. I think they're 1.5 right now. They need a draft. They need a solid draft to close that out, and second wave of free agency. So I think there's a couple little holes here. So I'm only going to say 10.5 right now.
Tell you what, man, I look at the opponents. They're not that scary. Honestly. So we should do it next week.
What's your call? 3?
12. No, 12. 12.
All right, 3. All right. Well, with that's going to wrap up this week's episode of Steelers Mad Monday. Would love to hear from you guys in the comments. How much you think the Steelers are improving, not improving, sandbagging the roster right now. If you don't like if you don't like the show, don't like the show. If you like the show, like the show. If you don't subscribe to the show, subscribe to the show. And if you haven't hit the bell icon, you're not getting notifications, please do so. You can also find us on SteelersTDU on Apple, Anchor, and Spotify. As always, Marky D.
Go Steelers.